Sometimes when you're trying to identify shipwrecks, you get two conflicting pieces of evidence that make the whole thing seem really confusing. What's absolutely brilliant though is when you manage to put the jigsaw puzzle together and you get something that all of a sudden allows that to make sense. That's exactly what happened to us about 6 months after we dived a stunning wreck in 80 metres of water off the southwest coast of Cornwall. It was a banger of a dive and a fantastic outcome. So pin your ears back and listen in for the story of the SS Polymnia. I think you're going to love it. Before I crack on though, I know it's a bit cheeky this early in the video, but if you could give us a like, that would be really appreciated. This story starts like many other ones, with us going out to dive an unknown mark. The only information we have on this wreck comes from the UK Hydrographic Office, and as you can see, it's pretty sparse, but it looks really interesting, which is why we're out here. This is a bit further west than many of my dives. We've left Plymouth and taken a boat to Newlyn, which is the most westerly port in England, and from here we've come out about 13 miles to dive the wreck. Now, the great thing about diving in this part of the world is that there are so many undived wrecks, or wrecks that have only been dived once. This area, the Western Approaches, is an incredible diving location. I'm fortunate enough to have done several trips down here, and they've all been awesome. But this one, as you can see, we've got this wreck that stands 10 metres proud of the seabed, which is really unusual. So we're on our way down, as you can see here, actually close to the bottom. I don't know why, but I didn't start my video before this. Rick and myself are diving together as normal, second pair in, although that's not actually strictly two because there's only 3 divers today. So one diver's down already, Rick and myself, because we've got scooters, we're coming in after him. And here I am, you can see, just getting my strobe on. For some reason I've only got one strobe on this dive. I guess the other one must have been broken. And you can see this one's not entirely playing ball either, so it's not a great day, but luckily there's other people on the other strobes on the line. I know Rick will have his on, and actually, as you can see, the visibility is incredible. This is 80 metres down. Normally video lights kind of do obscure the visibility bit, but you can see here it's absolutely wonderful. You can also see there's a really nasty bit of fishing line in the water, and this wreck was absolutely covered in it, as you'll see later on. One kind of slightly negative bit, as you can see here, is I haven't got the white balance settings correct on my power lens, so I'm getting this kind of reddy orange glow, which is really irritating, and I'll just get it out there and say sorry for that right now. Anyway, so as always when you get onto a wreck like this, it's like trying to figure out where we are. Now, I happen to know this is the stern of the wreck, and so I'm going to put you out of the misery on that one. But at this point in the dive, I'm still trying to figure out exactly where I am. And you can see there, I'm kind of heading for the highest bit. And this bit of the wreck here, you can see there's a bit of hull that's fallen over, and it's actually on the, I'm on the port side there. So I'm going to come over into the middle of the wreck, which is going to put me probably closer to the starboard side, and then I'm going to start moving forward. So just off to my bottom right there was probably the number 4 hold. There you can see is a cargo winch, so that would have been in between the number 3 and the number 4 hold, and that's how they would have got the cargo out. Up in front of me there, that's a number 3 hold. That's interesting because, as we subsequently discovered, the torpedo hit on the starboard side in the number 3 hold. So as I'm looking at it here, it's just on the right hand side. That is where the torpedo hit, and you can see the wreck actually has got a list over to the starboard side, and we'll see more of that later on. I've just spotted a porthole there, and that's a pretty good sign that this wreck hasn't been dived very much. Wrecks that have been dived a lot, you don't tend to see these things. You can probably just see there, just that I'm just put the torch on another porthole, and in fact as I move up this side of the wreck, there's a line of portholes. There's another one. So there is a ton of portholes on this wreck, and there in fact is another one and another one. So there's, I've lost count of how many I've seen there, 5 or 6 already. Absolutely incredible. So this is kind of the accommodation area aft of the bridge that I'm going along now. The engine bay is down to my left hand side. I'm on the starboard side. There's another porthole. In fact, a whole load more portholes. There's 1, 2, 3 perhaps there in front of me. Now they're all iron backed, so this kind of porthole, the bit that attaches to the ship is made of iron. The window that would open, that is made of brass, and obviously the open and closes as well. So there's another one inside the wreck, and this bit here is probably, this is in and around the bridge area. So what I'm doing is I'm obviously looking for any of the bridge gear, but also you sometimes get bells in this area as well. So you've got to remember, this is a completely unknown marker. We know nothing about it other than the length of it, the height it stands up on the seabed, and the beam as well. So this is the information that we've got off the UK Hydrographic Office website. So we're now down here at nearly 80 metres. We've got maybe 30 minutes on the wreck, and in that time we've got to try and get as much information as we can about it as possible. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Clearly what I want to do is find something with some information on it, maybe a bell, maybe a maker's plate, maybe a piece of crockery, anything like that that can help us identify it. So I'm going to put you a bit out of your misery, because I've already at the beginning of this video showed you that we brought up 2 pieces of crockery, and those combined with the size of the wreck and some other information such as the fact it was a steamship, the number of boilers, etc., the length of it, that is what has allowed us to identify the wreck. The thing that was really confusing though was the fact that we had crockery made by 2 different companies. Not only were they made by 2 different companies, one of them was from Germany and one of them was from the UK. The UK one was from Cunard line, really well-known shipping line. The German one was kind of used by lots and lots of different shipping lines. So trying to figure out what had gone on there was really confusing. Perhaps somebody had taken one from another ship as some sort of souvenir. That was about the best we could come up with until we had our eureka moment. Well, I say we had our eureka moments. James Beluza, skipper of Seeker, one of the In Deep crew, he was the man who had the eureka moment. I'm going to come back to that in a minute, and the reason is because this is where on the ship the crockery came from. You can see it there just in the picture. I'm just putting my torch on it. Now you're going to see me in a second. I go over there, I have a look at it, I take it out, and I pretty much dismiss it, which I have to say was a really foolish thing to do, because I didn't bring any of this crockery up, but I learnt my lesson. And anybody who's seen my video about the discovery of another Cunard line ship, the Nantes, will see that I did bring crockery up on that, a broken plate, and that's what allowed us to identify it. In this particular case, I just have a quick look at those things, can't see a shipping line logo on it, and sack it and move off. One of the other divers, who was clearly much more sensible than me, they went and they brought up a couple of those plates, and those are the ones that you've seen already, and those are the ones that solved the mystery. So massive kudos to him. It didn't solve it immediately though, because we still had this dilemma about a German plate and a British plate, and how did that all work together. So James was on his boat about 6 months later. We'd all looked into it, we'd all try and found out different things. James was on the boat and he's chatting with one of his customers, and he said, we haven't been able to find records of any Cunard ships sunk in this area. And the customer was like, oh, my dad wrote the definitive book on Cunard shipwrecks, and so I'm going to put you in touch with him. So that is exactly what happened. We got in touch with the gentleman who wrote the book that you've seen earlier on, and he explained exactly what had happened. And it's a really interesting story, and another one of these things that has been completely forgotten over time. So I'm going to come to that in a minute, and the reason I'm going to come to it in a minute, because on the dive I am just getting to the bow, and the bow is the loveliest part of this wreck. It's the bit that stands up 10 metres tall, which is absolutely incredible. The ship is sitting on a pretty solid seabed, so it's upright, but the fact is it's survived intact, upright, for well over 100 years, since it was sunk on the 15th of May 1917. And when you consider the weather that we get in this part of the country, and the tides and the corrosion and all that kind of stuff, the fact it is so upright is absolutely incredible. Having said that though, it is only the bow that is upright, and you can see me there, I'm looking up at the bow from the inside the ship. So most of the ship has collapsed apart from the bow that is still upright there, and you can see the deck is kind of sloping down. You can see it's bent. You can see that the force that's exerted on all those beams and everything. So it's not going to be like this for too much longer. We reminded all of us of the wreck of the Justicia, which is in Malin Head, and it has a very similar sort of thing. So a massive bow that sits upright. You can see also that the bow is covered in fishing line. You can also see there Rick, who's with me. He's also on his scooter. He's seen the opportunities that this wreck presents for photography, and I've seen that the opportunity that this particular part of the wreck presents for being photographed. So what I've done is I've gone into model mode, and I'm sat there. I'm shining my torches on the wreck. I'm trying to give Rick as much light as possible so that he can get some decent photos of me. And you will have seen the results of that right at the beginning of this video when I show them, and it's one of the things I can't highlight enough. If you're diving with somebody who is as good as Rick and has got the eye for the photo, then just take the time, pose for him, and he will capture you, and you'll have those photos forever, and it's absolutely brilliant. So that's you can see I'm looking down onto the seabed there. You can see how good the visibility is. I'm looking back down the wreck there, so that's the port side. I've just had a quick look at my computer there, just making sure where I am. Now, obviously, the other thing I'm really keen to do is, clearly I want some great photos of me, but also what I want to do is try and find the bell, because surely the bell must be in the bow. It must be somewhere around here. So you've already seen me have a bit of a look for it as I went up to the bow, but I'm coming back in for another look. All I've seen so far is a bit of a lamp. There was a broken kind of copper kerosene lamp or whatever on the seabed. Now clearly that's of no interest to me at all. That's not going to help identify it, and it's smashed to bits as well. So it's the bell that I really want. It's got to be down here somewhere. Actually, we've done 2 dives on this wreck. We came back about a year later because it was so good, and we still felt the bell must be down here somewhere. So we came back for another look at it, and conditions weren't quite as good as this, but we didn't find a bell on that dive either. So pretty disappointing. What I did do though is I found a very small hand bell, the kind of thing that maybe they would have used for ringing out watches, or maybe as an alarm bell or something like that. Now, I've promised you several times that I'm going to tell you the story of this ship, and it's an incredible one, and I guess just typical of what happened in those days. So the Polymnia was not built as the Polymnia. It was not built for the Cunard lines. It was actually built by the Germans in Hamburg as the Henriette Woermann, or Woermann perhaps. It was built for a German shipping line, and it was used to move stuff to and from the African colonies, or the German African colonies. And at the beginning of the First World War, that's where it was. And we captured it in what is now Cameroon, and handed it over to the Cunard line, who managed it through the First World War. And once you know that, all of a sudden, all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle come together, and it's really obvious that probably no other ship could fit the bill for this one. It's the right length, it's the right size, it's got Crockery from Germany, it's got Cunard line Crockery. This is very close to the reported sinking position of the Polymnia as well. So bingo, that is it. Another mystery has been solved. And over here you can see, this is me back where that Crockery was found earlier on. And you can see there is a diver with a couple of plates in his hand, and he's bringing them over to me to show them, to say, look, that one's got Cunard line on it, which you can see, we've already seen that. And the other one has got the Altwasser crest on it, and the Altwasser writing, and that's the German stuff. So that is how we solved the mystery of the Polymnia, and it's a brilliant outcome. And it just shows the importance of not neglecting evidence, in my opinion. And I took a really good lesson away from this, and as I say, that's what helped me identify the Nantes, probably 18 months after this. So yeah, it's a great story, and a really good result, and shows shows what a good bit of detective work, and also sometimes knowing the right people as well. So that's, if you're ever looking at a shipwreck and you ever trying to identify, every piece of evidence is valuable. That's all I would say on this one. So I guess it's also, now that we know the name, we can say the story of the Polymnia as well. So what happened to the Polymnia? Well, it was, we captured it in 1914, we used it, and then in May 1917 it was coming back actually from Africa with a cargo of iron ore and fruit, and at 6:30 in the morning, presumably it was relatively quiet, all of a sudden there was a massive explosion on the starboard side of, as I've already said, behind the engine in the number 3 hold, and very quickly the ship started to sink. They had, as often they did, they had the lifeboats out, so most of the crew got on board the lifeboats, and unfortunately, very, very sadly, 8 men lost their lives when this went down. There's 27 guys on board, 25 Brits, an American and a Norwegian, and 8 of them died and are commemorated on the Merchant Marine Memorial in Tower Hill, which, if you've never been there, is a fantastic place, and shows, you know, how many guys and how many ships were sunk in both World Wars. It's somewhere that I always try and go to when I'm in London, and you can see on the brass plaques there, you can see the names of the guys who lost their lives on the Polymnia. So the rest of the crew were in the lifeboats and actually had no idea what happened. They hadn't seen the submarine that had sunk them, and then the submarine came to the surface, as I think they often did, and because the skipper wants to know what ship is just sunk and any information he can get. And this was the UC-75, commanded by a famous skipper called Johannes Lohs, who went on to sink 77 ships with over 165,000 tons. He won Paula Mérite, which is the most prestigious German medal of the First World War. So he was a really serious guy. He died in 1918, not on board the UC-75. He died on another submarine, the UB-57. The UC-75 didn't make it either, and I assume therefore a lot of the guys who sunk the Polymnia must have been on the UC-75 when it was sunk towards the end of 1918. But it was a very successful submarine, and so did a lot of damage, and I can't imagine there was much sadness in this country when it went down. So the wreck of the UC-75 lies off the east coast of England, up near Scarborough, and has been identified. So anybody who's interested in diving it, I think it's in a kind of recreational depths as well. Not 100% certain what I'm doing here, but I'm in and around the engine room, so perhaps I felt that might have been an engine room telegraph or something like that. Just, I guess, trying to find something that might help us identify the wreck. This is on the port side, and it's quite broken down here, as you can see. The hull has kind of fallen outwards onto the seabed, and as I come in here, I think in a moment we're just going to get a glimpse of the legs for the engine room. Rick is on the other side and actually took one of the photos that you've seen earlier on. The really nice photos is of me in this part of the wreck. So as you can see here, I'm taking my time, having a good look round. There was something else on the left hand side there. No idea what it was. It looked big, but also didn't look as though it would offer any clues. Clearly, in fact, there you go. That's the engine. You can see it standing up on its leg. Bog standard 3-cylinder, compound engine. Clearly, somebody else has been in and around here, so there's been a bit of rummaging. So there's a bit of poor viz. And you never know what you're going to find in these kind of places. People who've seen my other videos will know that I had a particularly good year in 2024 for makers plates. This dive was from 2023. No makers plates on this dive, no makers plates in this year, very unfortunately. But hey, there we go. There's always another year. So I've had a good look around. I'm now heading sternwards on the port side, and you can see there that the hull has kind of folded in. So, and I'm just coming up on top of the wreck there just to have a good look around. You can see how much netting and rope and stuff there is on this wreck. It's not very far away from Newlyn. Newlyn is a big fishing port, one of the busiest in the country, so I guess it's not really surprising that there is so much netting and stuff on it. And this is me coming up here. You can see this is the top of the engine here, so I'm just coming up to have a look at the engine. You never know, it might be something interesting on that as well, but it's a 3-cylinder compound engine, and there are any number of ships of this period which have similar engines and are missing and all those kind of things. So we're not learning an awful lot from the engine, although it's always interesting to see. The other thing about the ship that I've already mentioned is that it isn't a particularly expensive ship. Tramp steamer may be a little harsh on it, but certainly once you get iron back portholes, it's a good sign that the ship, nobody spent loads of money on it. In fact, you can just see the 2 boilers going underneath me there. So those are, or one of the 2 boilers rather, that's just forward of the engine, but they are kind of buried with bits of hull here. And this is me back over on the starboard side of the wreck now, and heading back towards the shot line. My dive is kind of coming to an end, and I'm just spending a few moments having a quick look round. So no idea what that thing is there. Looks a bit odd. Don't know. It's not particularly interesting. I think I'm just going to give it a bit of a tug. Realise it's really heavy, and you know, probably made of concrete or something like that. So I kind of make the decision that it's going to not going to shift any further, not going to help with identification. So the one thing that I'm really kicking myself about this dive is that I never really had a look at the stern properly. I don't know why I didn't, because it is something that I try and do on most of my dives. And if I'd have had a look at the stern properly, one of the things I'd have spotted is the gun there. And it was supposedly right next to the shot line. Only a small gun, a 3-pounder, but the Polymnia was defensively armed, as were, I guess, most ships by the time they got to this part of the First World War, just as an attempt to deter submarines. So it was defensively armed. The gun was there. I didn't see it, and which is a pity, because that would have. It is one of the things that helped us to identify. Only one diver saw the gun, and they weren't 100% certain that they'd seen it or not, or they said they'd seen it, and we were like, no, we didn't see the gun, you know. And normally we're pretty good at spotting that thing, so that then put a bit of doubt into their mind. And yeah, so when we came up, we had a big discussion about whether there was actually a gun or not. We didn't have any footage of it. Rick hadn't taken any photos of it. I hadn't got it on video, so we couldn't say for certain whether there was a gun or not. So that's something we rectified on the second dive. Came down, and yeah, definitely there is a gun on it. It's definitely a 3-pounder. And so, you know, once again, another piece of evidence that fits the Polymnia jigsaw. So this is back. This is actually the stern here, but I don't spend the time I should, because the gun is actually just to the right hand side as I looked at it there. And if I'd have spent a bit more time looking around, I would have seen it. But hey, that's the way it goes. You know, sometimes you get things and sometimes you don't get things. But now this looks suspiciously like a prop shaft in front of me. I'm not 100% certain whether it is or not. And as you can see, I don't really spend the time to have a good look at it. You'd imagine if it was a prop shaft, there'd be a prop on the end of it. There doesn't seem to be. So maybe it got trawled off. Maybe it isn't the prop shaft. Not 100% certain. What you can say, though, is that there is what looks suspiciously like a big anchor just down there. So that, I guess, ties in nicely with what you'd expect at the stern. Once again, I'm not really taking the time to have a good look at it, because this is the end of my dive, and I need to get up to the surface. So this is me coming back to the shot, which, as you recall, was in the number 4 hold, right at the stern of the ship. So the good thing is I've been all along the ship. I now have a really good feel for it. I know what I would do if I was going to come back, and indeed I do come back, and I know where I'm going to prioritise. And there, in fact, that's Rick. So you know, we've stuck together. We're both you know, thinking along the same lines, and we've both done our dives, and we're both going to head up. So it's actually been a brilliant dive. We don't know how brilliant it is yet, because we've got to wait 6 months until we identify it. But it's just, we came out this dive absolutely buzzing, because the conditions were so good. The fact there was so much down here to see, and you've kind of seen that already. And I mean, you can see, just looking down here, you can see the decks are intact, which once again is really unusual. Oh, there's that nasty net that we saw on the way down. I've been carrying that bag with me the whole way along. I don't know why. It must have fallen off at some point or something like that. Or anyway, I've got it with me. I think I'm probably going to clip it away at some point. So there's me recovering my strobe, clipping it back on, and me heading back up the shot line. You can see above me there, you can just see how lovely and blue and light it is. So that's always really nice when you're going up. It does, however, as you can see there, muck around with a white balance on the power lens, which irritated me at the beginning of the dive, and is still irritating me now. But hey ho, there you go. Nothing I can do about it now. Just one of those lessons for the future. Make sure you've got the power lens white balance settings done correctly, otherwise you end up with orange, stuff everywhere, which is just looks rubbish. So you've seen me there. I am changing my set point. That's me doing my set point on my CCR controller. I'm putting it up to 1.5. It's a bit ahead of where I sometimes do it, so I must be needing to get out the water a little bit quicker than perhaps I sometimes do. And there you go, there's my other one, and you can see me changing the set point on that one. You can see I've got about 114 minutes TTS, so just under 2 hours deco. I've been down 32 minutes. First stop is at 39 meters. So this doesn't often get captured by my power lens, but you can see there really clearly me changing the high set point on the sheer water to reflect what I've just done on my inspiration controller. So it's reflecting what I'm actually breathing. I'm doing this as I'm ascending, as you can see there. Rick is somewhere around me, but I'm not particularly looking at him. And the next item on the agenda is going to be the lazy shot, which is coming along very soon, I'm sure. And as soon as I'm past that, I'm going to show you my decompression profile, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the gases and stuff that I use. You can see Rick, he's just below me there, basking in a glow of an orange laser beam. And in fact, right on cue, there is the lazy shot, 2 tags on it. One of them's mine, one of them is Rick's, and that's a weight for keeping the lazy shot down. I'm going to turn my torch off eventually, get rid of the orange light, so the only one you can see now are the ones that are attached to my scooter. And I've had enough of them, so I'm going to switch now to my deco profile. So people always like me to talk about gases and depths and dive plans and all those kind of things. So this is the dive profile for the dive that I've just done. You can see the big spike there that I'm just on. That's the top of the bow, and I think shows how much the wreck stands above the seabed. That one there I think is on top of the engine. And then obviously you can see me kind of coming back up. You can see all the normal deco stops. That's probably the lazy shot there. And then you can see the rest of the dive profile. I did this dive on 1265 helium as a diluent, which is, I think, a pretty good gas for this kind of depth. It gives you equivalent narcotic depth of about 24 meters, which means you've got a relatively clear head. And the gas density at 82 meters, which I don't think I quite got to, is 5.545 rather grams per liter, which is within the kind of recommended limits of 5.2 is best, and 6.3 or whatever it is the one that they recommend you don't exceed. So overall pretty good gases, and you can see their total run time of just over 2.5 hours. So, and I think I even did a couple of extra minutes at the end there for the wife and kids. So overall, I think it was 1265 is quite a nice gas, and it works well for this kind of depth of diving. And you can see there, it's quite a reasonable profile. As with always with any sea diving profile, there's always going to be a few ups and downs and bits and pieces. But overall, nice dive profile, nice dive, and always very pleased to find our chariot when we arrive on the surface. This is diving off Seeker within deep. Today's skipper was Hugo, who you can see on there. He came down with us to Newlyn, and we were also really fortunate to have Honey as our crew on board the boat. So I hope you've enjoyed my dive. I hope you've enjoyed the fascinating story about the Polymnia. As always, please feel free to hit the like button, feel free to subscribe, and turn on your notifications. And I love your comments, so please leave me something to read. Okay, thank you very much.